Hello everyone and welcome to WhatCulture Gaming. I'm Josh, joined today by Kirsten for a horror-themed video because last week we ran down all of the PS5 games coming out before the end of the year. So this year, I thought, considering we're both really big horror fans, we'd run down every single horror game, or at least all the big ones we're looking forward to that are going to drop before the end of the year. So Kirsten is going to kick us off with quite a biggie. That's a sequel to a game that came out last year.
Yes, so we have the Dark Pictures anthology, Little Hope, which is a sequel to Man of Medan. Now, it's about a town called Little Hope, and these group of college teenagers and their professor get stuck there, and they have to try and find their way out. But Little Hope seems to be haunted by its past because it was subject to some very horrible things, in which it was like witch trials and some horrible deaths. It looks like they were possibly even killing children that were suspected witches. It looks very heartbreaking in that sense, but were these people being controlled by something supernatural, or is the town just become this creepy place, haunted place, because of what they did there? So they kind of switch between the present and then like they get visions of the old town, and there's always a creepy priest. It's just there's always a creepy priest in stuff like this. Obviously it's multiple choice and it affects the story, like the butterfly effect thing, which seems to go throughout the Until Dawn and Man of Medan thing. So yeah, whether the group of teenagers and the professor make it out by the end of the game seems to be totally up to the player, really, as usual. So if you're like me and you just like being evil and killing everyone off, or killing off that really annoying character, then yes, this is one for you. And again, Until Dawn and Man of Medan looked amazing. Until Dawn was one of my favourite games to play. I think I played it like 3 times because I like going through, I don't know about you, but I like going through, doing it normally and trying to get the best ending, and then afterwards I'm just like, screw it, I'm just going to kill off everyone I don't like, and then I go like, and now I'll kill off everyone. It's the best thing to do with multiple choice games like that.
I think you need like one of those runs. You need a total death run to just try and kill these people who you might not like as grisly as possible. I'm like you, like Until Dawn is one of my favourite PlayStation 4 games. I've played that a bunch, both by myself, both with friends, trying to make those different choices matter. And I think their writing, when it's spot on, it is really spot on. Man of Medan I was put off a little bit because I feel like some of the things that the developers did after Until Dawn weren't quite at that level, but it sounds like they've really listened to the feedback fans had for the first part of the Dark Pictures anthology. And I love the fact that they're still committing to it. They could have very easily canned this if they thought it wasn't working, but the idea of these shorter, imaginative horror experiences is really something I'm here for, especially in a with a theme like this that seems to be inspired by the likes of The Witch, or I think they mentioned Hellraiser as well, which is always good by me. Anything inspired by Hellraiser is a very, very good thing.
Is a winner. Yes.
I have sadly no segue into the next entry that we've got, but it is, I suppose, like Little Hope, it is a sequel. It is Dying Light 2. I'm not sure whether you played this, Kirsten, but for me, like, the core gameplay there was so interesting, and what they're planning on doing with the sequel is more or less doubling down on the narrative elements. They're going to introduce a lot more RPG features where you have, branching storylines based on your actions. They've even got the writer of The Witcher 3 on board to kind of make this world as believable and as interesting as possible. And for me, the narrative was always the weakest element of the first game. So that is something I do think they needed to kind of, remedy in the sequel. But this has been delayed quite a few times. It was initially supposed to come out, I think it might have even originally supposed to have come out this month, but it's been pushed back a few times. It's slated for spring 2020. I imagine that's going to get pushed again, but it seems like a very ambitious game, and a lot of people love the original. The developers supported it, quite a lot. So for me, I think it will be worth the wait, and I just want, I want another zombie killing game. That's really, really good, and the first one was, at least in my opinion.
Yeah, no, I really enjoyed it. It's I think I started playing Dead Island, and then when I saw Dying Light, it was one of those games. It was like, oh, if you like zombies, you'll like Dying Light. And yeah, it was such an interesting concept because, like you said, it's not really a horror. It's more of I think the horror aspect comes from the panic that you get, especially when you are running around obviously in the dark and you can't see much, and that's when you panic. But when you're running around, you know, in broad daylight, it's not really scary. But it had a good story. It definitely could have been better. But yeah, the aspect of it of being this survivor that you do just kind of have to run around and physically just try and survive this zombie apocalypse is a game that I think just works so well, and that's the sort of thing that I think zombie fans really want, is just a game where, especially if it was sort of like had like an RPG almost element, or something where you could at least kind of customize your character a little bit more. That's what people want. They want to feel like we're here, we're the ones that are surviving. We're not playing as this other random person, or you're seeing it from a different perspective. You want to be in the eyes of this person that's trying to survive. And I think that's what worked really well for Dying Light. And it just mixed so many different random aspects, and it just worked so well.
I fully agree. Like, I want to see them double down on that day-night cycle, like you said, because during the day you did feel a bit more confident, you could gather more resources. But once the sun went down and those scarier creatures started coming out, you felt that sort of intensity, you know, like rising. And I love that flow. Good horror is always to do with the pacing, I think, and how scares are set up. It can't just be full throttle all the time. You need to, you know, have that build up and have that payoff. And I think Dying Light, for my money, did that well. But we should move on to a game that, to be honest, I don't know much about this, but Kirsten, I know you know more.
Yes, it is Remothered Broken Porcelain. Now, I have recently just downloaded Remothered Tortured Fathers, which it looks terrifying. The second one is very similar, obviously just way more zooped up, graphics are way better. And it says that it's about someone trying to find the truth behind the Ashman Inn, in which people are trapped in time within this inn, and they are basically haunting the inn. You have to be quite strategic and resourceful. It seems like you have a limited amount of resources, have to be very strategic in how you play the game, because it can be difficult in I think with like puzzles and stuff like that. With a lot of these games, that's what gets that panic going, is the puzzles that you have to try and solve while these things are following you. Even though it looks terrifying, you want to keep playing it because you want to find out how it ends. You want to know how the story ends and what will be the ending that you will get. So
yeah, 100%. I mean, I didn't know even about the original before I started doing this video, but, you know, going back, doing a bit of research, looking at the trailers, I'm just a sucker for kind of a big gothic haunted mansion. And like you said, the mystery at the heart of this second game sounds genuinely quite tantalizing, and trying to figure that out while you've got a bunch of ghosties on your back. I'm just here for that. It's kind of like, for me, that's a subgenre that I just take a lot of comfort in. The games don't even have to be 10 out of 10 masterpieces. I enjoy that niche so much that I will play more or less, or at least I thought I did until I didn't know what this was. I'll try to play pretty much everything in it. Moving on to my favourite of the whole list. This thing, I've seen it in screenshots for a while. It's called World of Horror. It's already in early access on Steam, so you can play a part of it now. It's set for release at the end of this year on PlayStation 4 and Switch, and I'm totally here for it. It's a sort of roguelike where you walk around this town and try to discover the horror at the heart of it, with turn-based combat, and, you know, your actions influence the outcome of the story. At least that's the plan. And for me, like, the promise of this looks so genuinely amazing, and it's already got a bunch of great reviews on Steam. I think it's like 10 out of 10 from pretty much everyone who's played it. If you like this kind of horror, if you just take one look at the visuals and it seems like it's your thing, I think you're going to have a good time with it. It's one of my most anticipated games of the year now. That is one that, conceptually anyway, is right up my street.
I do love a little bit of HP Lovecraftian horror. There's honestly, just something that just will always work well. But yeah, I have another sequel which is coming our way for Little Nightmares 2. So same characters, you'll still have Six, which is the little girl in the yellow coat from the first game, but you play as a different character called Mono, which is a little boy, but Six is basically helping him to escape this world that he's trapped in, which is to do with this weird transmission that seems to be going on, and basically the whole story is about them trying to survive this world that they're trapped in and trying to figure out where this transmission is coming from and how to stop it. All the while, Six is kind of got this terrible fate which seems to be coming her way, which I think Mono has to try and stop from happening. Again, it's got all these horrible, terrifying monsters. There's this one character which looked like it's like in a school, and she's this really like big teacher, and she has this oversized head, but like a really big smile that goes up to like her eyes, and no, it's just creepy. It just is creepy, but obviously that's typical platformer puzzle game that we have in the first one, but just a continuing story. So I think it's going to be another brilliant game. Whether I'll actually get through to playing it, I'm not sure, because again, it's just the monsters. They just creep me out. It's worse than anything I've seen in like Silent Hill or anything. Like, I could take Pyramid Head any day, but oh no, especially the first one, that creepy long-armed man that crawls after you and has got like a bowler hat. No, thank you.
This isn't kind of like when you get a game like that, sort of takes some concepts that could be kind of like childlike in the way they look, and kind of just twist them into something horrible. That the Conjuring series does that really well. Yes. With like the Crooked Man in the Conjuring too.
Exactly.
Like that, I fully agree. Man. It's probably terrifying.
And I think that's what's scary, is because you know that it's children that you're playing as, and you just panic because you're just like, those poor children, like, just run, leave them alone. And I don't like it. It's creepy. I don't like it.
Speaking of things that I don't like, it's the look of a game called Sons of the Forest, which is out in 2020 and is a sequel to The Forest, which was kind of like a cult hit when it came out back in 2018. It's again more of a survival game where you're dropped into the titular forest and you have to defend yourself against these kind of descent-looking creatures. But the weird thing is that they're not just kind of mindless monsters. They're actually quite intelligent, and they will kind of surprise you with their behavior. This sequel is set for release sometime, like I said, in 2020. It looks kind of more action-packed than the first. It looks visually really, really stunning. And it kind of, the trailer release so far reminds me a bit of, I'm not sure if you played Outlast 2, but the start of that, where you get stranded in the middle of the forest and you don't know what's going on, and that kind of the mystery of what could be out there is kind of something I felt like they moved on quickly from in Outlast 2, and this has that setup, but it looks as though it's going to go, like, dive deep into that mystery and dive deep into the survival horror mechanics. And I'm, again, here for it, because there's been a long time since I've played a proper survival game that I really loved. Obviously, there are loads of them on Steam and stuff, but a truly polished one, a truly interesting one, for me, nothing's scratched that itch in a while, and I'm hoping Sons of the Forest is the one to finally, get me right in the the terror valve? That's what I'm going to call my heart from now on. The terror valve.
Yeah, no, I don't think I ever played, and The Forest was another one that people were always like, you should play The Forest. But yeah, the whole sort of like proper survival, like having to build your old your camp and stuff, just didn't appeal to me too much. But no, I agree. It's one of those games you want to play, but you're just too terrified to actually proceed with it. But
100%.
Anyway, on to our next game. I have Someday You'll Return, which is a game I haven't heard of. I had to do a little bit of research on this. It looks to me like it has a Blair Witch kind of vibe. It's by CBE Software, but that sort of first person, like trekking through the woods. It's a man who's trying to look for his daughter, which in his words he says has got lost, which is just a bit suspicious to me. So how she has got lost, I don't know. But it's got a mixture of puzzles. It looks like it's got some crafting aspects. He's like creating potions and like health elixirs and stuff that he drinks. It's got like a limited resources sort of function within his inventory. So how those mechanics are going to work in a horror game like this, that looks like this, I'm not 100% sure if it's just going to maybe give you that kind of panic aspect. But basically it seems to take place in the real world with this man that's trying to find his daughter, and this other world which looks very similar to The Void from Dishonored, with this young girl that seems to be kind of beckoning him, and it's very ominous and very open-ended with the, oh well, I didn't think you'd ever return. So you're sort of sat there like, so he's been here before, what's going on? Like, yeah, and his daughter seems to be trapped within this void. And yeah, it didn't seem to explain as to how he got there or how he knows about this place, but there's something supernatural, and he kind of goes from one reality to another, and it's basically just about him trying to save his daughter from this creepy void where this other creepy girl seems to have her trapped, but we don't know why, which is very intriguing to me. There's a bit of mystery about this one, but it does look very good. The story looks very good, and it's got some mechanics in it that just seem very interesting. It's kind of got like a Resident Evil sort of like, you know, you pick up a radio and then you're like, why do I have a radio? And then it's got batteries in which you need for something else, and you have to combine the two. So it's very interesting. I've not seen a game that looks like this in a good long while, actually.
For me, I got kind of a bit of Blair Witch vibes with this one, you know, just in the kind of, you know, like in the scares and the kind of iconography and stuff like that, and the themes. And the one I have next is actually the next game is maybe a companion to this, because that's also about looking for a child who has gone missing. It's called
it's a theme.
Yeah, exactly. Oh, yeah, it's a big theme in horror games. It's called Unholy. It was originally supposed to come out in 2019, but it's got pushed back. And it's kind of similar, but more hellish, I suppose. It looks a bit like that Agony game that came out a few years ago, only hopefully a little bit better than that, because that wasn't all that good. But it's very kind of Wicker Man-esque, Kill List-esque, a bit like The Witch, you know, it focuses on that kind of pagan sort of style of horror, I guess. In this, it's sort of it plays around with the player's sanity. At least that's the plan. You're going to have a sanity meter, a bit like the one in Amnesia, which I'm always a big fan for. I don't know if you played Eternal Darkness, but that did some really interesting things with the player's sanity and the player character's sanity, and it would mess up your game with hallucinations and stuff. And I'm always here for anything that kind of subverts your expectations or subverts mechanics, as it were.
Yeah, I never got to play Eternal Darkness, but it's one of those ones that are on my list because it did look brilliant. And like you said, the fact that you're taking someone that could be relatively normal, but because they are in this terrifying world and they are slowly kind of going insane, they start experiencing things which you can't differentiate as to whether it's real or not. And yeah, that's a really cool aspect. I love that in video games when they do, especially in horror games, especially. Speaking of Amnesia, actually, we have Amnesia Rebirth, which is...
Brilliant segue, that.
I know. See what I did there. It is on Steam for kind of like pre-order at the moment. It obviously is still by Frictional Games, which are one of my favourite game developers. I think they are fantastic. Everything they've done has been amazing. But it takes place in a very different world to what the first Amnesia seem to be, and the reason I say this is because it takes place from a woman's perspective called Tarsi or Tacy. I'm not 100% sure how to say her name, but she's kind of trapped in her own personal hell, and she has these regrets and maybe things that she's done in her life that she's not 100% proud of, and she's now having to pay the price for that. So she basically has to kind of escape this personal hell that she's stuck in. However, to me, it seemed more like a sci-fi horror compared to the supernatural horror that the first Amnesia game was, because there's definitely some sort of alien thing going on here. They're showing sort of these buildings and mechanics and stuff that look very alien, which is very strange considering what the first game was like. But yeah, you basically just have to try not to go mad. You have to get her out of this horrible hell space that she's trapped in. You have very limited resources. Obviously, you've got the typical puzzle games along the way that you have to try and solve in order for her to survive. But yeah, definitely a different turn from the first game.
I think that's kind of needed as well, because like you said, I love Frictional Games, and I think when it comes to the Amnesia franchise, that is so iconic for a lot of people. That's one of the games that kind of, you know, ignited the big horror boom back at the start of the 2010s, and I think it makes sense for that studio to not rest on its laurels and just give you another Amnesia, but again, to subvert your expectations, do something different, and whether it pays off, we don't know, but at least it'll be something, you know, new and original, and hopefully a proper, you know, do for the 2020s horror what Amnesia did for the 2010s, if that makes sense. I'm a big fan of these guys. I'm a big fan of Amnesia. This to me is perhaps the biggest on the entire list. But I suppose I want to know what you guys think down in the comments below. Are you looking forward to the horror games on this list? Were there any that you didn't know, like me, and are now looking forward to as well? And are there any I missed that we need to add on to this? While you're down in the comments though, could you give us a like, share, subscribe, and head over to WhatCulture.com for more lists and news like this every single day. Even if you don't, I've been Josh, joined today by Kirsten, and we will see you soon. Bye.